Hey, welcome back everyone. We are back with another Unpopular Cards episode, and this time it is thanks to a comment left by Dr. I'm in Love the name, who recommended I cover equipment in my last video. I do actually read every comment that I get, and I respond to them. If you take a look at my past 15 to 20 videos, you can see that I respond to every comment, even if there are hundreds of comments on the video. It does take several hours every week, but I do appreciate the community and the time that you take to share your thoughts on my videos, so I try and reciprocate it. And as a note, if I don't respond, it's because for some reason YouTube blocks some comments from me seeing it, and I don't notice that until I'm scrolling through not in my YouTube app. But anyways, here we are. Today we're covering 10 equipment cards, which is a category that is very top heavy, in my opinion, meaning you see the same 15 to 20 equipment cards played in almost every game. I'd love to make a deal with you all. Let me know what you think. But if I am able to successfully highlight an unpopular card that piques your interest enough to buy it, it would mean so much if you do it through the TCG player affiliate link in the comments. The support means a lot, but I totally understand if not. Thanks either way for being here. We're going to jump right in, and the first and most popular equipment that we're covering today is Necote Stealth Suit, which is played in 14,372 decks. This card is a 2-mana equipment, and it says, equipped creature can't be the target of spells or abilities. For 2 blue mana, it has an activated ability that says, attach Necote Stealth Suit to target creature you control. It also has an equip cost of 1. So this has some similarities to top played protection equipment like Swiftfoot Boots, which is in 1,600,000 decks, and Lightning Greaves, which is in 1,461,000 decks. Now, I know, hold up. I'm not saying that this is the same, and I'm in no way saying that this is on their same level. I did mention they have similarities. Obviously, this lacks the haste enablement, which is a big bummer because that's one of the things that I really love about those spells. But the similarities that I'm talking about is, in terms of protection, this card is great. It costs the exact same amount as both of them and has the same equip cost as Swiftfoot Boots, but with the shroud effect that Lightning Greaves offers. But however, the very nice thing about Necote Stealth Suit is it does something that neither of those other 2 options do, and that is it allows you to activate the ability at instant speed, unlike generic equip abilities. This is extremely underrated, especially if you play decks with heavy interaction, or maybe you're a clue token deck that wants to hold up interaction, then crack clues if nothing happened. If someone sees 2 blue mana pips up on your board open, they will likely not be wasting a removal spell on one of your creatures unless they have another one in hand. But at that point, that's a big feels bad to cast 2 removal spells to just get rid of 1 threat. Looking at the top commanders, Urza is pretty far down on the list, and that is the first artifact commander. So honestly, I'm pretty surprised that more clue token decks out there, the ones, that win with cards like Rise and Shine, or Cyberdrive Awakener, or Tanglegrove Kelp. I'm surprised they're not running these because the 2 blue pips it is a little steep for anything beyond mono blue or 2 colors, but at worst, this is a Swiftfoot Boots without the haste, and at best, it is a removal counterspell on a stick. The trick is to have something to dump the unused 2 mana into if you don't end up needing to use it, which I feel like will be most of the time because, like I said, people will likely not play the removal into this card, and so you have 2 mana to crack a clue token. Can anyone who plays this card let us know what decks you run it in and how it performs? Because I'd love to hear. Next up, we have Mace of the Valiant, which is played in 11,279 decks. Mace of the Valiant is a 3-mana equipment that says, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each charge counter on Mace of the Valiant, and has Vigilance. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a charge counter on Mace of the Valiant. Equip 3. So I actually like that this puts the counters on the artifact as opposed to the creature, because it carries over from creature to creature if one of them gets removed. Yeah, because it can be rough when you've accumulated like 10 or 15 +1/+1 counters on a single creature over a few turns. Then out of nowhere it gets removed and you have to start all over. But with this, if your creature dies, you can equip this to a 1/1 token and it suddenly becomes 10/10. I've had so many games where a busted artifact accrues so much value over the course of the game because people are much heavier on creature removal and board wipes, but don't really run enough artifact or enchantment removal. This card, of course, does really well in white token or blink decks, in which case this card can get out of hand very easily and turn any creature into a threat. This creature buff is already great with just the +1/+1 effects per counter, but the fact that it also gives Vigilance, that's just like a great bonus because you can now attack with your huge creature and have a huge blocker to deter other people from attacking you. The last thing that I will mention about this that I like about this card is that it clearly goes well in those go wide strategies, which go wide strategies already have their ways of winning. They overwhelm you with a bunch of attackers, but this gives those decks an additional win con that they don't normally have, which is suddenly winning through Voltron wins. If they kill a huge creature, they still have a massive board to deal with. Or if they deal with your massive board via a board wipe, the very next turn, there's suddenly a new huge creature that's 20/20 just for a single token. So if you're playing a multicolor deck with black or green, you suddenly enable all the huge, great draw spells that scale with big creatures, or you can make more creatures based on size by sacrificing. Of course, this isn't for every deck, but if you do have a go wide deck or something that gets a lot of creatures on the board, then this can really pop off. Our third card today is Trepation Blade, which is played in 10,902 decks, or just 0.19% of every deck that can run it. Trepation Blade is 3 mana with a 2 equip cost that says, whenever equipped creature attacks, defending player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card. The creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each card revealed this way. That player puts the revealed cards into their graveyard. So this is kind of like a really unique effect for an equipment and actually synergizes really well with more decks than I think people give credit for. The fact that it puts all of the cards in the graveyard, including the land that is revealed, can be a very nice stack that gets added to someone's graveyard. So of course, the first and most obvious strategy is mill decks that want to fill up people's graveyards. And like I said, you obviously don't want to run this against the Golgari player, someone who can recur those lands from the graveyard. But I'd say this card is safe against most average decks. I really like the RNG aspect of this because it could be just one card and you get +1/+0, or it could be 5 to 7 and it's suddenly +7/+0. I am curious, if you are one of the 11,000 decks running this, how much is the most you've ever put into a graveyard from a single attack trigger? I'd love to hear, how big have you actually gotten it? And speaking of attack triggers, this is an attack trigger. So Isshin 2 Heavens as 1 would double this up, which would lead to a pretty big buff to the attacking creature. Another great use would be something like Captain Necote, which has a clause that says, at the beginning of your end step, Choose target artifact or creature in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from the library this turn. Put it onto the battlefield under your control. On top of the captain's ability that mills a player for the amount of damage he does, this can add much more to the stack of cards you choose at the end of the turn. Tiny Bones, the pickpocket, can snipe non-land permanents from people's graveyards, and what's nice is that the milling happens before combat damage is done. A few other ones are the Haunt of Hightower, which doubles up the buff from Trepation Blade, leading to a very big attack pretty quickly. I also like this idea for Alexios Deimos of Cosmos, or Slicer Hired Muscle. Yeah, red doesn't really care that much about people's graveyards, but these creatures are already attacking, so why not make them bigger and deck people 4 times around the table while you're at it? And the last use case that I'll mention is something like Sir Conrad the Grim, who deals 1 damage for each opponent whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from anywhere. And this is also a great setup for cards like Breach the Multiverse or Jetsam, which is an insanely underrated uncommon that I covered in a different video, or Reanimate Effects. If this is your first time on the channel or you're a longtime viewer, we have an amazing community in the Patreon Discord. It's only $2 and you can get access to everyone's favorite hidden gems and to over 400 deck lists and descriptions which were submitted in our monthly Unpopular Commander competitions. The list is incredible for some deck building inspiration if you want to check it out. Nemesis Mask is 4th today with 10,382 total decks. This is 3 mana, and so it also has a 3 equip cost and says, all creatures able to block equipped creature do so. I don't really have too much to say about this card. I talked about how much I love lure effects in one of my other unpopular card videos, but essentially the TLDR, lure opens up opponents to a full-on alpha strike because all the blockers are dedicated to a single creature. With that, you can either attach this to a 1 mana do nothing token, or you can also equip it to death touch beasts like Shelob, Child of Ungoliant, or hilarious, you could attach it to indestructible attackers like Marika, Brutal Gladiator, or Brash Taunter, or Stuffy Doll. And if you run multiple combats each turn, even better. 3 more commanders that this works great in are General Marhalt, Elsdragon, who pretty much turns this into a board wipe. Anzrag the Quake Mole can, if you're attacking against like a small enough board, can just generate a ton of combats. Or Jared Carthalion True Heir pretty much just absorbs all of the damage and becomes a massive threat instantly. So with this, it's pretty simple, but there are so many ways to break lure effects. Maybe you just tack on an infiltration lens and draw 10 cards, which, by the way, does work because it's for each creature blocking it, not whenever 1 or more creatures block it. What other great use cases for lure effects come to mind? I'd love to hear if you have any hilarious things or things that you've done in the past. We're dropping all the way down to 7,794 decks next with Hot Soup. And no, this is not an unset card. This is a 1 mana equipment that says, equipped creature can't be blocked. Whenever equipped creature is dealt damage, destroy it. And it has an equip cost of 3 mana. Look at this art. This is sick. It's giving the same glass cannon vibes as the battering ram troll in The Hobbit Battle of the 5 Armies. He had 1 job and he did it at literally any cost. The same thing applies here. You equip this on a creature that has 1 job, which is to get through and deal damage to your opponent at any cost. Outside of red, most colors don't really do much with targeted damage dealing. So if the creature isn't able to be blocked, there really aren't that many other ways that people deal damage to a creature outside of combat damage. So they're honestly more likely going to just have to use regular removal spells on the equipped creature. This card works well in the new commander, Codis the Famekeeper, who has Indestructible, so even if someone managed to deal damage to it directly, it lives. Or this also works great in any Voltron commander, or also something like Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, who normally struggles to get through beyond turns 4 or 5 because people by then are done casting their mana rocks. Most of them now have a creature on the board, so there's no longer one open player that you can swing at. I think, I could just name so many other commanders, but this isn't really anything unique. Essentially, if there's a commander or creature that has payoffs for dealing combat damage, then this is a pretty underrated option. If someone is playing red, like I said, you can make a deal with them to not ping your creature, and you'll attack the other 2 players with your big unblockable creatures. Have you used this before? Love to hear what you think. And maybe, we just need to be more like the battering ram troll and get the job done at all costs. We are now at the halfway mark, and this one is pretty insane and easily breakable in my opinion. And that is Death Render, which is played in 7,421 total decks. This says, equipped creature gets +2/+2. Whenever equipped creature dies, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield and attach this equipment to it. And if it's not auto-equipped, the equip cost is 2. I don't personally run any infinite combos, but right off the bat, this could go infinite with creatures that cause others to return it to your hand, like Cole the Forge Master. You stack the abilities so that the Death Render ability happens after the dead creature is already put into your hand, and then once this ability triggers, you will put them back onto the battlefield and reattach this card to that creature. So all you need is an infinite sack outlet and a payoff for either ETBs like Goblin Bombardment, or a way to make infinite mana, which could be your infinite sack outlet like Phyrexian Altar. And wow, guys, we finally did it. We finally broke Phyrexian and Ashnod's Altar. Let's go. Other enablers like this are cards like Enduring Renewal, Endless Cockroaches, Mortis Strider, and yeah, Artheos, God of Passage, isn't infinite, but a lot of people could get hurt in the process. When I picked this card to highlight, it wasn't for the infinite or large looping possibilities because, like I said, I avoid those. I highlighted this card because that ability can be pretty bonkers, even outside of any combo potential. This doesn't have to be part of an aristocrats deck with access to infinite sack outlets to be scary with the auto-equipping. This can kind of act like just a pseudo protection spell in a deck that runs big, scary creatures. So think of decks like Ghalta Stampede Tyrant or Kalia of the Vast, because at any given moment in the game, those decks have 2 to 3 big, scary creatures that could just change the course of the game. Or even something like Brago King Eternal, who has some ETB effect ready for you at the pull of the trigger. So if this is attached to a 3/3, which now becomes a 5/5, and attacks me every turn cycle, yeah, that is annoying. And yeah, the 5 damage does hurt. But I'm honestly it can be just as scary to remove it and suffer the consequences. Because it's all right, what big thing are they waiting to just cheat in? And so, of course, this doesn't have any built-in protection, but against many decks, the psychological effects can be just as effective as if this did have a protection or ward clause. The last thing that I will mention is that this is a death trigger, so Teysa Karlov would double up the death trigger. The first one would resolve, and you could put a creature from your hand onto the battlefield for free and equip it. Then the second one would resolve, and you would put another creature onto the battlefield for free and have it removed from the first creature and auto-equipped to the second creature. I think that this can be a very fun card to build around, and I'm honestly shocked that it's in less than 7,500 decks. Yeah, I get it. 6 mana can be a lot to turn on, but all you need is to cheat in one 6 CMC creature to pay itself back, and every other creature you cheat in after that is just free value. Next up, we have another banger, which is Kusari Gama, which is a 3 mana artifact played in 6,823 total decks. This says, equipped creature has pay 2. This creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. The next ability says, whenever equipped creature deals damage to a blocking creature, this equipment deals that much damage to each other creature defending player controls. And the equip cost is 3. This card makes it so your opponents do not want to block your big creatures pretty much at all costs, or else you'll wipe their whole board. And, this really does just put people in tough predicaments. It's like, all right, do I block the Ancient Silver Dragon and have 8 damage dealt to my entire board and effectively wipe it? Or do I put the fate in the hands of the dice and hope they only draw 2 or 3 cards? So either way, Kusari Gama puts your opponents in a lose-lose situation, and you as the attacker are probably fine with either one. They can block and you wipe them, or you get your combat damage trigger out there. So this is the last combat damage related equipment that I'm sharing today, but I really like this card because it makes your opponents not want to block your creatures that have strong abilities when they deal combat damage, or you could just attack with, the creature and force someone to block it with provoke type effects. Has anyone ever run this card? If so, I'd love to hear how it's performed for you, because I really like it. Our next underrated equipment is Assimilation Aegis, which is played in 5,548 total decks. This is our first and only 2-color equipment that I'm covering today, and it costs 1, a white, and a blue, and says, when this equipment enters, exile up to 1 target creature until this equipment leaves the battlefield. Whenever this equipment becomes attached to a creature, for as long as this equipment remains attached to it, that creature becomes a copy of a creature exiled with this equipment. Equip 2. So I have been wrecked by this card before, and I've also done the wrecking. So I have a love-hate relationship, love using it. This card does some awesome things. First of all, it exiles creatures. So it gets past indestructibility and has a relatively cheap cost for what it does. I'm going to give you something to think of. And I want you to think of the first thing that comes to mind. What is the strongest dragon creature that you can think of? All right, do you have something in mind? Great. Now, what about the strongest demon that you know of in the game? You have that? Cool. Okay, now just turn a 1/1 creature token into that creature for the simple price of 2 generic mana. I mean, that's pretty good. And by the way, what were the creatures that came to mind for those categories? Because now I'm curious. As per the rules of this card, if you're able to exile more than 1 creature with this, either if that's through a copy effect or something doubling it up, like Panharmonicon or Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, you can choose which creature you want to copy when you equip it. The other really nice thing about this card, other than the fact that it is an ETB, so you can copy it, is that if you exile someone's commander, you can either copy the commander if they decide to not put it in the command zone, or if they do put it in the command zone, which would make it so that you can't copy it because now nothing's exiled with this card, you can just bounce it back to have the ability again. It's not a cast trigger, so it is abusable with ETB effects. So having that removal built into the equipment and being able to steal the best creature on the battlefield and turn a token into it is incredibly underrated and has won me several games. Our second to last card today is Demon Mail Hob, which sees play in only 3,112 decks. This is a 4 mana artifact that says equipped creature gets +4/+2. Equip, sacrifice a creature. I really don't have a ton to say about this card other than I'm throwing out a budget option to people who are looking for an infinite sacrifice outlet. Besides all of the altars, Viscera Seer, Carrion Feeder, Woe Strider, or the other 2 to 3 cards that you're thinking of. Especially if you're not running black, the number of infinite sacrifice outlets are pretty slim. And this one is probably one of the most unpopular options out there. So in terms of payoffs, this really isn't even that bad. Yeah, you don't filter through your library like Viscera Seer, but turning it a 2/2 zombie into a 6/4 attacker while sacrificing the cards that you want to is not bad at all. So if you run a deck that is in need of more sacrifice outlets, this is a good one for you to consider, especially since it carries a hefty price tag of 6 cents. Our final card today is Necote, which is played in only 1,975 decks. This card says, whenever equipped creature deals damage to a creature, tap that creature. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as this equipment remains on the battlefield. Whenever equipped creature deals damage to a player, that player loses 1 life. Equip 2. What? Did I read that correctly? That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step for as long as this equipment remains on the battlefield. That's insane. It's not while this is equipped, or until equipped creature dies, or until this becomes unequipped, anything like that, or until end of turn. No, they're just locked out and remain tapped as long as this is on the battlefield. So if someone is in mono black or just doesn't really eat their veggies and put in a lot of artifact removal, then they have no blockers or attackers effectively for the rest of the game. This card is the other thing that's insane is it's not combat damage. It's any damage. So this is only played in 3% of Gearson's Starn Kellermorph decks, but you literally cast and end the festivities, and every creature you do not own on the battlefield is tapped down indefinitely. Or maybe you play Captain America First Avenger, tap down the 3 biggest threats, then do it each turn because you're going to be doing that anyway. You're going to be activating his ability probably every turn. Or maybe you have an unpopular commander like Brigid, Hero of Kinsbale. Well, yeah, block at your own risk. And one more is Tibor and Lumia, who will tap down your opponent's non-flying creatures every time you cast a red spell. Now, we're getting to the second part of this ability, which is equally crazy. Whenever equipped creature deals damage to a player, that player loses 1 life. So now Slimefoot the Stowaway and Sir Conrad deal 1 additional damage to the already strong ping effects that they're running. And so this turns those commanders into a very formidable kill threat beyond the huge threat that they already were to the whole board. And then once we start including creatures in the 99, there's just so many cards that can shut down the entire board state or drain the board. This card is just insanely slept on. I can't believe it's in under 2,000 decks. It's not even that expensive. Once again, if you saw something that you liked in this video and you decide to try it out, it would mean so much if you support the channel by using the TCG player affiliate link. But either way, I appreciate it if you made it this far. Let me know, what Magic the Gathering topic do you want me to cover next? I said at the beginning that this video was inspired by someone's comment. So from now on, I am going to pin a comment 5 days after posting each video, and the pinned comment will be a topic that I will create a video on. So let me know in the comments below what kind of video you'd like to see, whether it's generic stuff like equipment, enchantments, or if it's something pretty niche or specific. I'm open to all ideas. Thanks so much everyone for being here. Visit back to see what the pinned comment is, and we'll see you next time.